Greetings to everyone. So in this presentation, I hope to underline some of the most important questions of the contemporary Quranic translations. And this one is the topic talking about official or authorized translation of the Quran, whether there are anything like official translation, do we have anything to authorize, or we have something like canonical translations. And in my presentation, I will cover some of the publishing institutions, those international actors who are working for years for promoting, producing Quran translation, making them popular, evaluating, sometimes criticizing some of the translation instead of promoting, and so on. So here we have a variety of experiences from such a leading countries of the Islamic age world, which is Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. And first of all, I would like to note that the second half of the 20th century is a time when we have a lot of new translations coming from all around the world, and especially a share of the Muslim translations is one of the biggest for the last decade. And that is why any kind of a study covering what do the translators say, how do they translate this and that verse are important, and also why such and such institution on the official ethic promoting this translation instead of another, how do those translations prepared. So I would like to show in this presentation some of the institutions in the Middle East and North Africa region publishing translations of the Quran on a regular basis. So here we have official think tanks. Here we have divisions of the ministries, as usual, ministers of religious affairs. And here we have independent publishers, mostly private, with a private ownership, publishing the translation for a commercial purposes, just selling them on worldwide. First of all, we have a historically first institution, which is the Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs. And there are in the brackets a number of translations provided. There are 28 translations for published until this year. There is a Turkish Religious Foundation, Turkiye Dernek Vakfi. They also made their best to promote some of the translations. Some of them are the same, like a Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs, but some of them are new and especially produced for this institution, being a foundation of a Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs. The next one is Cahariya and Lari Publishing House, well-known publishing house in Istanbul, mostly making paperback editions of the existing translations. They published around 20 translations. Also Hayrat Neshriyat. This is the institution also located in Istanbul. This is a private publisher with some of the religious foundation associated with it, and they produced around 10 translations, but there's also those publishing houses, they are promoting translations already published and well accepted by Muslim community. The next one is talking about Saudi Arabia. Of course, we have a very, very important international prayer, King Fahd Quran Printing Complex. And until now, there are 88 translations published, including the translations, the partial one, like a translation of Juz Amma, the last sort of the parts of the Quran. Also, there are translations, for example, in various scripts, translations even to some dialect, like a point with the Kurdish language. And there are some of the languages where a few translations exist. For example, for the English language, they have edited version of Abdullah Yusuf Ali translation, and later they changed it and started to publish Taqiyuddin al-Hilali and Muhammad Muhsin Khan translation into the English language. And the last center is the Center for Translation of the Holy Quran in Iran. They promoted around 10 translations until now, at least two of them. The Russian and English one were made specially by the experts of this center. So some of the translations used by those institutions were taken from the market and were existing before, and some of them were a really new one, produced especially with a new hermeneutical approach. So how do these translations produced on this level? Here we have photograph covering around 10 translations into different language from the experience of King Fahd Quran printing complex. They have the same oriental binding, the same verse-by-verse translation with the Arabic text, with a formal introduction and so on. So they are all about the same. They differ only in color and of course in the script and in the content, but all of them look like that. And there are many publishing houses in the world just following this example. And they have this style developed around in the very end of 80s and using it until now without any changes. Just recently, for the last 10 years, some of the translations appeared without the Arabic text because, as it was explained by expert of this complex, they were made especially for dawah purposes, for invitation to Islam, like making a missionary activity, and this is why they included only English text to be read by non-Muslim readership. So most important questions in my presentation to answer: how the translations are being produced, if some translation has been published before, how it could be selected for publishing among others, do those institutions make especially a new edition or it publishes text as it is, and can translation by a non-Muslim be printed by especially Muslim publishers? So do we have something like that? And I would like to show some of the examples. This is the oldest institution for publishing the Quran. Of the modern ones, of course, this is a Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs, publishing Quranic translations starting from the 30s, especially starting from Turkish translation. We see also quite a traditional style developed especially for them, and most of the translation published, they are made somewhere else. So those are the translations published before, like Abdullah Yusuf Ali translation into Licia, Hamza Roberto Picardo into Italian language, or there are many other examples like that. So they also use some Oriental translations, some of the translations published by non-Muslims, like the proprietary version for Max Henning translation into German, but with a special editing procedure. So they are taking existing translations, making some of the changes or not making if it fits for their guidelines, but generally Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs is quite liberal, and we see there are many different approaches to the translation. Some going with a commentary, some without commentaries, some with special insertions. Some of the translations are really providing 2-3 meanings for some verses. Some of them are more strict in meanings, providing just one interpretation. So there are quite a flexible approach actually for selecting and publishing those books. So here we have also the Arabic text, and this is a stamp of approval, but we see this, the approval from the Turkish religious institution, the approval made only for the Arabic text. So we have the Arabic text only here. So this is the, like, the translation is approved, but not the translation itself, but the Arabic text inside the translation. So you will not find anything like the translation is really suitable or something like this, because this is a very old conception developed in the 20th and 30s of the 20th century. The translation is only something to be approximate in relation to the Quran and never provide a me'ali, the meaning in Turkish, 100%. So this stamp is only about the Arabic text, how many copies printed, which printing house is selected, and so on. Here we have also the translation of the Quran published in Saudi Arabia. So we have here the formal introduction from the Minister of Religious Affairs, and almost in every, this is the same introduction for every translation, just the name of the translator, of course, and the languages and the revising committees change it. So formal introduction also describing that the Quran cannot be translated in general, but it can be only provided as a commentary, and so on. Also, we see the standard format for that. This is a verse-by-verse translation. So there is Arabic from the right side and the target language from the left side, with some of the commentaries, but sometimes they are like a footnotes and so on, but generally most of the translations follow this pattern. And we have also special stamps made on every translation. What does a stamp mean? This is a quality control. There are 3 levels of quality control inside the Qingfah Quran printing complex, but most of this control is also going for the approval of the Arabic text. So this is like an overall quality of the publishing material, the correctness of the Arabic text, especially, and check it before the publishing. So this is also fits into the same concept of the Quranic translation, as only interpretation of the meaning is our language. So in some way those translations are official, but it's really hard to find any single document talking this and that translation is official or this is authorized for the usage. So this is like most of those institutions, be it the Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs or Qingfah Quran Printing Complex, even promoting the special translation, they are making the kind of a disclaimer that we are not responsible fully for the content of that, because the translation cannot convey this meaning. So this could be used and it should be used in some context, but we may guarantee only the quality of the Arabic text printed, and the translation can have some of the errors, mistakes, typos, and so on. So this is the same science, and if anyone is has any of those books in the libraries, there is a good opportunity to see all the stamps in every mushaf and translation, also printed in Saudi Arabia by Qingfah Quran Printing Complex. And the last of those institutions, we are now switching to the Iranian experience of publishing the translation, and what you see on the screen is the translation of the Quran into Azerbaijani language, but the Azerbaijani with Arabic letters used mostly in Iranian, but actually by Azerbaijanians living in Iran. So this translation also follows some of the very good Oriental pattern, this like a Persian example of the Persian art. And it also says that this is the Quran with the translation of the meanings into Azerbaijani language. So we have here a Shia approach to translation, but in this regard, it's quite similar to the Sunni one. And also this center in Qum, Center for Quran Translation in Qum, who prepared this translation, and with the assistance, of course, the translator Ismail Zadeh Duzal. So they established it in the same year when Qingfah Quran Printing Complex developed its own translation center. It was 1994. So this is like a kind of competing institution from the Shia world to the Sunni world, like Qingfah Quran Printing Complex, Al-Azhar, and Diyanet in some way. So this is in particular Shia translation of the meanings. And we have here also similar approach to the publishing this translation. This is the Arabic text, of course, and the translation from the right side. So this is also verse by verse translation, one page of the Arabic text and one page of the Azerbaijani text with some of the footnotes and so on. And we see a kind of very, very short introduction talking what is the translation of the meanings, that this is for every nation, there should be an opportunity to read the interpretation in their own language, and there is a sign of approval, but this sign of approval is also as a relation only to the very Arabic text. So this is only about the text of the Quran, because this should be published with special approvals, that it follows the traditional Qira Hafs and Asim. We use it in Iran, and the same in Turkey, and the same mostly in Saudi Arabia, and most of the in Sunni world, of course, and in Shia world. This is the most accepted variant of reading of the Quran, and it also talks about the same stuff, the Arabic text, that this is correct and can be recited and so on. But nothing is said about that the translation is approved by someone, and that someone is taking responsibility to recommend this translation. Of course, they say it could be a good translation. They have some that fits into some hermeneutical approaches and so on. But generally, it's hard to find anything really like a sign of approval, despite we have a lot of statements in the Muslim world talking about do this or this translation can be recommended and so on. And this is, for example, the Quran with the phrase "refer English translation" produced by one of the experts of this center in Qum, Ali Kuli Karai. This is translation into English, published in United Kingdom, but it's quite popular among Muslims, despite it has like a special approach based on the Shia sources. And of course, this translation will be widely accepted by Shias, mostly on the Sunnis, with many translations published before. So those are main features of the institutions publishing Quranic translations. And when we can say something related to the private publishers, like I mentioned before, they mostly reproduce the existing translations. So even those publishing houses in Turkey, they're taking the translations from Diyanet or from us and distributing them mostly at a low cost or sometimes even freely on demand of some people who are ready to donate their cost to that. So finally, answering to the questions, are there any authorized translation of the Quran? So I see that most of the institutions working with those texts, they still continue to promote the perspective for the Quran translation as an interpretation only, but with the establishing the well-known tradition of the Arabic text and usually including the Arabic text into the own printing processes. So thus we have almost all the editions published with the Arabic text only, like this is the Quran with the translation of the meaning. So this is like a compromise between two approaches. From the one side, the Quran cannot be translated, but from the other side, the message of the Quran is conveyed, and this plays more and more important role in contemporary Muslim religiosity. Thank you so much.